Ready for this? So, are you one of those obnoxious people who are high on the Christmas spirit even before December has even begun? 'Cause I am! So, today we're making this Christmas themed Harley Quinn. My thought process behind this doll is that it's the newer Suicide Squad style Harley, paying homage to her old school style, hence the red and the black outfit. I think her progression as a character is really cool, and I like all the different Harleys, so this is just me mashing up some of them. For the base of this project, I'll be using this Dracula Monster High doll, which I bought second hand, and she has a bit of glue stains on her from a previous project that didn't really work out, but we're gonna make it work. Firstly, I cut away the point at her ears, because Harley doesn't have that. It's not really gonna matter because you don't see it for the hair, but I went ahead and did it anyway. Since the doll was already faceless and hairless, we can go ahead and prime it with the Mr. Super Clear spray and then start our repaint using watercolor pencils, chalk pastel and acrylic paint. Firstly, I sketched on the shape of the eyes and the lips in acrylic pencil. That's very subtle because I know I'll be going over with acrylic paint later on, but I'm just too much of a scaredy cat to go in with acrylic paint without having sort of a sketch first. And ahead of this, I had made a sketch like a character design for my Harley. So I knew I wanted her to be winking because I thought that would be a very cute look, and I'd never done a winking doll before. And I wanted her to have shimmery, glittery eye makeup and an almost pouty lip. To correct the pink skin, I dabbed on chalk pastel in a light yellowish tone to bring it to a more skin-like color. When using pastel, you can always use an eraser to remove it from many parts of the face where you don't want it. Then I sealed in the pastel with another spray of Mr. Super Clear, let it dry, and I actually repeated the powdering of the pastel one more time just to get it to the opacity that I wanted, but that's up to you how many layers you do, and then we start working on top. So now we can start defining the features, and as I mentioned, I'll be using a lot of acrylic paint, and I usually choose to use that when I want a lot of opacity right away, but I still like to build up some pencil underneath, again just because I'm a scaredy cat and it's just part of my process. For the eyebrows, I sort of sketched them out using chalk pastel on a little flat brush that I kind of cut down to size, and this is because you can easily erase the pastel and get it into the shape you want, and it gives a very soft look, and then I'll go in on top with a pencil making strokes like little hairs. For the lips, I went straight in and filled them in with red acrylic paint, just because it fits the character and it fits the season, and I was kind of going for a slightly pouted, kind of half smile to one side look. I don't know what you call that, but I don't think it ended up being too obvious, but I didn't want to have to shade her face too much because it can look a little unattractive sometimes on female character if it's not done right, and I didn't really trust myself, so she's just, you know, a little pouty, a little sassy. Now we fill in the eyes with acrylic paint as well, and I thin out my paint just a tiny bit so it's very smooth, and then I build up a few layers for opacity if I need to, rather that than having visible brush strokes, because that might interrupt any shading I do later. And I try to do a gradient in the blue of her eyes, just going slightly darker in one corner, down to lighter at the bottom. Because I wanted it to be the newer Harley paying homage to the old Harley, I still made her face tattoos in black acrylic paint, and later on I dab on a bit of the skin color chalk pastel on top just to blend them in a little bit and make them look a little less harsh. For the eyeshadow, I started by filling in the basic shape of her eyelids in colored pencil. So this is how far we are. Now I'll give it another seal so I can work on top. In a lot of the layers I repeat the same steps because the colored pencil really needs to be built up. Whenever I use acrylic paint like this, I will always make sure to seal it in with the Mr. Super Clear spray before I try working on top using pencils, just because I feel that it can sometimes scrape the paint off again if it hasn't been sealed. I used a slightly deeper skin tone to add a bit of shading to the face, for instance adding a bit to the edge of the mouth, kind of like dimples, and on the sides of the nose, temples, and underneath the cheekbones. I always like to use a bit of black pastel to shade the eyeball, just because it helps add dimension. Now back to the eye makeup. To kind of smoke out the eyes, I used blue and red pastel, very faintly, starting to build it up around the edges of the shape we've already made, building up more and more color. I also use some white pastel to highlight the face, just to again bring out some of the features, but also keep on the pale side. And time for another spray. I draw on lower lashes with my black pencil to keep them slightly more subtle. If you want them to be more defined, you can use acrylic paint. And I won't be drawing on any lashes for the top lash line, because I'll be adding on 3 dimensionals later, just because I like the look. For slightly harsher highlights around the face, I use my white pencil. For the highlight of the eyes, I use some white acrylic paint. You can also use the watercolor effect of your pencil if you want. Adds up to the same pretty much. And then I did some finishing highlights on the face using chalk pastel, and then I seal it in the final time. Once the spray had dried, we can add on the glitter to her eyelids. And I simply just added a bit of glue in the shape of the eyelids and then drizzled the glitter on top, shook off the excess and allowed it to dry. Oh, look at that sparkle. Yeah, I know I have a problem. Then we're gonna add on some eyelashes and then glaze the eyes and the lips. Now for the hair, I use some white acrylic yarn, which I brushed out and then straightened with my hair straightener into doll hair. I then laid the hair flat onto a plastic bag so I could work in glue in the top of it to make it into wefts, just because it's easier to handle when I want a straight hairline. To get the ends of the hair to fade into blue and pink, I used chalk pastel, simply brushing it on. To make the hair curl, I wrap a strand around the handle of a brush and then use my flat iron to heat it into place. Then we're ready to glue on the hair. Once all the hair is on, gather it into pigtails, add the pastel and curl it. And that's the hair done. Now onto the body. I use the kitchen film and tape method, which I often do, to put on the doll so I can draw on my pattern, and then I cut the pieces out and transfer them onto paper so it's easier to handle. Cut out the pieces for a little bodysuit and sew them together. The hardest part of this clothes design to me was making sure that I had the right color piece on the right side, because you usually work, on the back side when you trace your pieces. To get neat edges on the satin I was using, I used this iron-on webbing to fix the edges instead of just hemming it, but how you do is up to you. Once you have the basic little suit sewn, you can fit it on your doll and use the access at the back to either close it with Velcro, buttons, whatever you want. So here's a basic little suit before adding details, and at this point I gave the body a spray of Mr. Superclear so I could adjust the tone of the body using chalk pastel as well, and also paint on simplified versions of the tattoos on her thighs, again blending them in with a bit of chalk pastel on top before sealing it all in again with Mr. Superclear. Then I put the clothes back on the doll, and then we can add the fur lining and sew that in place. And I like to do the majority of the sewing before I shade the body of the doll, just to make sure it doesn't rub off with wear and tear. Accessorize with a sporty pair of doll boots, and then you can add the final details in the little diamonds on the suit. For her kinda twin Santa hat, I had no clue how to make a pattern for that, so I molded one of the shapes in tin foil, covered it in tape so that I could get a pattern like this out of it, and then I cut it out of the same black and red satin as I made the suit out of and sewed it together. Add a little fake fur lining on the base of the hat, then add a pom-pom to each of the points, and then the hat's done. Now you can assemble the doll, and she's all ready. And here she is, all done. I didn't have a Barbie or Monster High sized Christmas tree or decorations, but I did have a 1 to scale one that I made a few years back, and it helps set the mood, some people buy small Christmas trees. I also accessorized with the bat I made for my original Suicide Squad Harley Quinn a few years back. I really hope you guys enjoyed this project and that it got you into the Christmas spirit, and if not, I can't really say I'm sorry because I had a good time. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the new one real soon. Bye!